is, I mean, my parents, I was born and raised in the Bible Belt. So I was born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, and many of the people who live in Tennessee, like from my parents' generation and the generation prior to my parents, many of those folk, not all, but many were from Mississippi. And I mean, they carried, religion is a huge thing. As a matter of fact, if you go to the South now and you encounter a Black person there, invariably somebody's going to say, God be with you, or bless you, or something like that. There is an assumption that everybody has that belief because it's so ingrained in the culture there. And folk are happy for you to be creative. When I was a kid coming up, in my family, be creative as long as you're singing gospel. When you stray outside of that, and I think that has changed, but there is still a huge thread that runs through the Black American community that is religious and informs, everything on that. And I think with improv specifically, not acting or something like that, but I think with improv specifically, that in our community in America is not seen as a viable avenue to making money.
Yes. And I do understand that mentality. Our first generation migrant parents as well, it was all about the money because they left their countries to make money. But there's a new generation of Indian and Chinese and every race, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, who are not quite as conservative as their parents about this stuff. But I just don't think we're reaching them enough by asking them to come here. So I'm just wondering some strategies. Let's get a bit practical in the chat. What are some concrete things people can do to bring in wider audiences? So maybe, Janaki, if you were like part of the management team of an improv theatre company, what would you do to diversify the audience base?
I would want to go into schools. I would want to go into schools in more regional areas and especially areas that we know are more ethnically diverse. And I would want to offer free workshops. So take in a troupe, very much what we were saying with these cultural fairs and what Charles was added with the Greek festival, take in a troupe, a seasoned troupe, and especially a troupe that these kids can look at and see, this woman looks like me, this man looks like me. Take them in, perform for these kids and run a workshop with them, get them up on their feet and see what improv is so they can experiment, potentially even doing that in universities as well.
Yeah. Please, I think.
I think one of the other strengths of that is you really need a sense of belonging, especially as a migrant. When no one looks like you, you're often feeling alone anyway. If improv can give you that sense of belonging, it's a natural fit for a lot of migrants.
Right.
I also wanted to talk about wiping. That's another topic that's come up a couple of times today. Mandy, what should be the approach to wiping? Like how should improv companies treat that issue when it comes to wiping scenes based on race or culture or contentious content in that area?
Yeah, okay, just to give some context, because I know we've had a few people come in a little bit late. So Janette and I were talking a little bit earlier about how we've had experiences where we've performed characters that represented a certain culture that we feel that we have a racist immunity to do. But our scenes have been wiped very quickly because there's a sense of, well, some people feel like a little bit cringy about it, or they feel like, it could be bordering on racism, but they don't realize that with our backgrounds, it's actually okay for us to play some of those characters that we've played. So I think maybe the way around it is more education, I guess, because about our cultural backgrounds and in the jams as well, just trying to, and for us just to keep doing it, even though we might get knocked back every time. But the more we keep doing it, the more people are going to realize that actually that's a part of our culture. And while we have a normal Australian accent normally, we've grown up with a Singlish accent or a Filipino accent or around Thai people or Indian or whatever. So, and the more we do it, some of the nuances that we've played with as well might be a little bit tricky, but that just comes with, again, a bit of education.
Kevin Cropanieri, the stand-up comedian, actually has to literally say, you're going to hear some offensive things tonight, but it's not really done offensively. It's just me telling the truth, but because of your fragility, you might get offended. And he has to actually spell it out. So I'm just wondering if it almost needs that from the MC of the night to say, look, you're going to hear some stuff that might seem contentious to you, but it's reflective of the characters' upbringings. So just come with us. And you almost have to be a little bit literal to soften people up a little
I think that's a really good idea, actually. Because, we can't assume that everyone's traveled around the world or they've been to some of the places that we might be representing. So, and we can't spell it out in the moment while we're doing improv. But if someone, the MC at the beginning of the night, just gives everyone a heads up, that would help. I think that's a really good suggestion, Ashwin.
Yeah. I liked what Asia said earlier about the reason this is important is because she's got some pain to get out. So it's not just trivial. It's not just about stereotypes. We might have grown up with racism or with ostracization. So this actually is quite helpful to talk about race rather than just talking about toast and kettles, things like that. So can anyone else share some insight about pain and how improv is quite useful for them to let out a little bit of pain?
I just wanted to comment though on, like, if there was going to sort of be a way for people not to wipe scenes so quickly, well, try to get to know people of other races. How about that?
Simple.
So simple.
Just try to get to know. I love all my Caucasian friends. They're wonderful, beautiful, compassionate people, amazing. But part of the problem has been that our first generation parents have just tried so hard to assimilate into white culture quick, get rich and get white.
Before they realise that we're black.
Yeah, I know. Oh God! Wait, it doesn't come off. Shit. But I mean, I'll say I'm in two minds about saying it. But if you can't hold up your hand and sort of think of like one or two Indigenous people or two or three or four coloured people in your life that you catch up with and on an intimate basis, and all your friends are white, then there's a problem. You should recognise that there's a problem in your life, and you need to do something about it, and that can help with the wipes.
Yeah, you're right. That is a much more complicated strategy, but you're right, much more effective. It's deep rooted. That is really the answer, isn't it? It's
because otherwise, because it's pretty systemic. The whole thing is really systemic. So anyway, but pain. Back to pain. Yeah.
I mean, as a comedian, I've got to say, as a comedian, it's going to be much easier to get white than rich, but. Doing my best. Has anyone else got a story of pain and what role it plays?
I wouldn't say pain as such, but definitely going into my background, like when I had the honor of being a storyteller for Cool Story Bro, I did talk about, I just joked about my white dad being an Asian wife hunter, and he's on his second Asian wife now, and things like that. And I talked about me and my brother being teased growing up constantly, and it was, are you Chinese? And we would say no. Oh, you must be Japanese then. Or being asked if we drank soy sauce and knew karate. And then I just, I talked about that with the audience, and of course, they were kind enough to laugh. But I saw in their eyes that it was like they felt relieved you know, that I could talk about it and they could laugh and we were okay with each other and me opening up about that. And I think when we talk about our real life experiences like that, yeah, I feel they appreciate it and they want to know more. It's not that everyone's racist and scared to laugh, but there are those who generally want to know more. And I think when we do just share our experiences, whether it's painful or just...
And I do wonder also, Janette, sometimes maybe deep down, every person wants their ignorance to be pointed out. You know, in a nice, subtle way, which, you know, which you were able to do in that storytelling.
Yes.
We recently had the duo shows, and with 15 minutes to sort of spill our guts. I'm doing a show in December with my partner, and we're touching on all kinds of issues. So I brought up the issue of having schizophrenia and, you know, and being homeless and being, and just not, just, yeah, definitely things that have happened to me in the past. I brought all of that up in the context of the improvisational comedy, on the improvisational comedy stage, and the whole room was just in stitches, totally in stitches. It was such a life-affirming opportunity for me to bring these things up, and I brought up race and white fragility, all within 15 minutes, and the room. I think there was one coloured person in the audience, but one, out of, like, you know, 20 people, and they were always sort of laughing very, and in some parts sort of really really awkwardly, like, you know, it was sort of like, white fragility, oh god. But I mean, you know, laughter heals people.
Yeah,
it heals me. You know, it's so important to have joy in your life. I would be so much more. I don't know. Am I making sense? I just that I guess is a time when I brought up pain, just in an abstract way, and I can't. It's no amount of money you could give me could replace the value of the laughs that I got that night, that affirmed my existence and said, you're okay. It's going to be all right. Everybody laughed. Yes, I'm different. Yes, I'm broken. It's fucked. The system's fundamentally fucked, but it's going to be all right, you know? And that was wonderful. Just wonderful. It brought us all together.
That's so beautifully put. And I think that's why this conversation is important, because these things like wiping prematurely and white fragility are getting in the way of people having that kind of release through their art form. It's really important as well. Janaki, I mean, you've come to, like me as well, we didn't start stand-up or improv when we were 20 or 21. We started later, and that's usually because you're angry about something or you want to get something off your chest. Are there things that you're angry about or have some pain that, you know, that improv helps you to do?
Definitely. I think improv just allows me to be an utter goofball. So there's that aspect of it. Like, I can be the silliest version of myself. And then I think in comedy, definitely things that I've been angry about. Like, one joke I recently wrote that, again, it definitely hits the white fragility like nobody's business. I talk about the stereotyping of white men like targeting Asian women or like black women, like that desire, that exoticism, and I punch the hell up at it. And it's a joyful experience because I keep running into this again and again. And pardon my language, I just had to get rid of a fuckboy today because he was literally just after that.
Oh.
And yeah, it's like, am I just this body and just this skin color? Like, what about the human being on the inside?
Mm.
So yeah, definitely. Like I said, I think for me, I was like, yeah, at first I think I definitely started talking about culture and family, but as I've been going, I'm like, yeah, it is in a way. It's this thing of, I'm angry about this, but I know there are other people who are angry about this too. And I know there are other people that this will resonate with in a certain way. So
yeah, so let's take this to the improv stage. Say there's an improv class tomorrow and you want to do a scene about a white guy who's got a brown girl fetish and you're playing that out. How would that go? How do you think that would be received in class?
I don't know, but you know what? You have to be brave and you have to try. Like, you need to try kind of thing, because again, it's this thing of like, as Aisha was pointing out, these stories, like, if we're just playing it safe, how are we challenging ourselves as performers? How are we challenging ourselves as storytellers? If we just keep toning it down, we really need to just take that risk sometimes. And yeah, sometimes it's not always going to work, as we all know, but sometimes it does work, it does land. And then we do have these other people that are coming up to us at the end of these shows, and they are resonating with the material and the stories and the scenes that have evolved. Like Aisha, with the people laughing about your experiences, a lot of them, I imagine, resonate with that material because maybe they are going through that pain as well. And the fact that you're able to laugh about it, it is therapeutic. It is a release for them.
Or sometimes people see their own shortcomings and find, you know, they laugh because it's like identifying oneself in the joke, or identifying oneself and they go, oh, that's me. Oh, you know, so it's like partly it's funny because it's true, and it's funny because it's a way of dealing with the fact that I'm humiliated with myself right now at my behavior, you know?
I think so. I'm getting a couple of things from this talk to make improv more adventurous culturally. Is one, the MC at the start of the night has to relax the room and say, it's okay, you're going to hear some culturally contentious things. The performers need to be spoken to before the night to say, don't just prematurely wipe this stuff. This is our story. Let it go where it goes. You know, just give them more time. And if you have any other thoughts on that, you can in the next section. We're just coming to some questions now. So if you're watching again, thank you for tuning into this. We are going to open it up to some questions. And we've had one already come in, so I'll just put this through. Now, I'm doing this on my phone in my kitchen under these bright lights, so I can't actually see everyone's faces. I'll just explain to the audience. But anyone jump in with an answer anytime you want to. But here's the question from someone that's come in. Are there any particular improv formats, show styles, or even established mechanisms, like tags, etc., that make these spaces more comfortable or uncomfortable, more open to diverse voices, etc.? I'm looking to better understand the dynamic between improv format choice and BIPOC experiences. Does anyone have some insight into the way the format can affect things?
Yeah, I think, so, you know, some of the scenes that Janette and I talked about were scenes where they can be wiped, and that can, you know, that sort of format can, people feel uncomfortable about the situation. That's why they wiped it, but that actually causes more feelings of being uncomfortable. Whereas the format that the troupe did on Friday night, where it was just in the one room, where there's no wiping, the scene just continues in the one space. That seems to be, I felt just from an observer in the audience, that seemed to be a really safe format for experimenting with different cultures and accents and anything to do related to BIPOC, really.
Excellent. Does anyone else have any thoughts about the format?
Oh, maybe long form. And I see somebody in Hannah in the Zoom chat is talking about the difference between improvisational theatre and improvisational comedy, and you know, I think the comedy shows lend themselves to short form more than, you know, and that game oriented theatre sportsy kind of improv than anything else. But I mean, I've done a few long form improvisational theatre shows, and they are outside of the realm of traditional improv companies as well, and they're more to do with creatively developing a script more than let's do some punchy gags that'll get us some laughs and we'll have some drinks and go home. You know, it's about creating a narrative, and maybe long form is the way to do that, where you know, the pull down doesn't happen by the necessity of, oh, we have to continue on beyond the 5-minute mark that we usually would put on this particular scene. Yeah.
It sounds like our long form would allow you to build a bit more empathy with the characters, get to know them a bit better, build tension, which is quite important for this cultural comedy as well.
Both the formats that I had in mind, just in they're both long form, so but there are, you know, within the different long form formats there are different styles. So the one that the guys did on Friday night, and maybe Janaki and Asia can speak to it, but
there was mono scene, yeah?
Yeah, the mono scene. It lended greater flexibility to let scenes breathe and create that narrative, because they weren't allowed to wipe.
I think it helped as well for us to be accommodating of our audience. So in as much as it would be nice to just assume that everybody will get all of our jokes, there are, you know, you make assumptions about an audience, and you do have to accommodate the room and the energy in the room. So having a long form format, it helps with that, I found.
Yeah. We've had another question come in from Hannah, which has said, would breaking the fourth wall with a disclaimer allow the audience and players to let you express the roles that are more diverse?
That would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? You know, just like, you know, this footnote kind of character kind of comes and says, oh, by the way, this word means this, or here's this cultural thing that white people probably don't know about. That would be hilarious. I mean, it would require a little bit of planning probably, but that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Charles, you've got quite an experienced acting background. What are some interesting or creative ways you could break the fourth wall?
Well, as I see it, it would be a character breaking the fourth wall while breaking out of the scene, almost like an aside. Just by the way, and then going right back into the scene. And to be a successful device, I think you would have to drop it more than once. You know what I mean? It would be something that becomes a device.
A convention.
A convention that happens throughout. Yeah. You know, but it's not overused, but just enough so that people are familiar with it. You know.
Or you could also do it as a, and it would only work if you had two people of the same culture on the stage at the same time and they weren't in the same scene together, but someone on the side, if someone's on the stage talking and they say a word that the person on the side knows that the audience wouldn't be familiar with, the person on the side could just do the aside to the audience, almost like a freeze frame type of situation, and then the scene keeps going, but keep doing that to make it funny every, you know.
Almost like someone who's doing sign language, it sounds like.
Interpreter.
Yeah, by the way, that means.
And doing it in a stereotypically white Australian accent.
If you've got any questions, now's a good time, because we've got about 14 minutes before the end of the show. So put in your questions now. Anne will pass them on to me as we're going to the end. Now might be a good time to, because I've been asking you questions. Is there something you really want to get off your chest about this topic that we haven't covered so far in our conversation? Is there something you really want to say?
Do you mean us, or do you mean the listeners?
Yeah, sorry, no, to you guys, to the performers, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Take me into your minds. What have we not covered yet that we need to get across about this subject?
I'm really amazed and honored that I live in a world that where that where we can have this diversity, and I can get on a stage amongst so many different humans. I mean, my mother ended up growing up in the apartheid, and she was the same age as my son is now, and she was surrounded by a bunch of white children and bricked, like literally bricked, like with broken bricks and left for dead, because of her color, and that was a single generation ago. It was just extreme racism, extreme. So to stand on a stage and be in this land of privilege, really, I know the racism is systemic, and we have to deal with things, but privilege in comparison to where my parents have come from and what they've experienced. She still has a scar. There's a scar right here,
Yeah.
It's remarkable, because that was a single generation ago. So thank you to every person, human being that I've ever performed with on the improvisational comedy stage. I love you. You're wonderful. You make my life better, so, and I'm so grateful that that this all exists, and that you would give us your time as well. Like, there's no malice in any of this at all. But the fact that we have the privilege of being able to even just have this conversation is just, it's beautiful. I live in gratefulness. Yeah. So yeah.
You speak with such depth. You have so much depth, and so I would love to hear more of your stories. There's so much pain there. Have you wanted to tell some of your mother's stories? Is that something that you really want to get out?
Oh, yeah. Well, that her, I guess, apartheid South Africa is an interesting place. Very interesting place. And her parents were essentially what's classified as European. But they were coloured, and so she had to go to a white school, which was a disaster. She's 2 shades lighter than me. What are you going to do when you stick her in a kinder surprise school, Of course it was horrible. But I mean, there was so much laughter in my house and music, and we laughed at some of the most horrendous things. That I think to be able to bring that sense of humor into comedy is just so really important and close to my heart, and something that I mourn about when I do go to jams and I can't, and I feel silenced, because there's nothing worse than sort of feeling voiceless when you already feel like a minority.
Tell me a little bit about that. What impact does it have on you to be silenced?
Oh, well, I mean, I already deal with mental health, with disability as well. So it's a loss of identity. So you don't have belonging. And when you don't know who you are, then surviving day to day becomes a bit of an issue, I think. And then the joy that's part of your day-to-day life starts to evaporate. I guess just this dysfunction is really easy to succumb to, and a lot of my the people that I know from the marginalized community, people who have slipped through the cracks, I guess you would call us. It's a similar story, a very similar story. We're not we're not coloured people of the gentrified kind. We wish, but but we're getting there.
I have a psychologist friend. We did an interview recently, and she talked about this exact topic. And she said one of the first things you see a young child do is say, "Mum, look at me. Look at me, Mum. Look at what I'm doing." Yeah. Like being seen is psychologically critical for everyone, and that doesn't go away. So when you can't express your stories and what you really want to say, you're invisible. That continues to damage you as an adult. So it's so important. And Colin, we're just about to come to the end. That's a similar issue I would imagine within Indigenous communities. A generation ago, things were very horrific as well. Could you talk a little bit about how important it is to tell stories for people from an Indigenous background?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're 2% or thereabouts of the Australian population, but we've been here for so much longer. We have an oral tradition, and storytelling is crucial to not only, it's not a matter of this is entertainment. We don't have a corroboree or a get together for we're just going to tell stories because we want to have a laugh or what have you. But storytelling is educative, and it passes on crucial information about the lands that we're on. Often a song, and I'm saying song in the songlines aspect of the word, or a story is akin to a tale about the land itself, which will do things like point out where a waterhole is, as opposed to it being, just a regular story. If I'm moving through the land like this ancestor did, and this ancestor saw this tree that was shaped like a certain object, that would indicate that this is a good hunting ground for game. Storytelling is absolutely vital, and it's not just having a lark. It's how we communicated for this 60,000 year period. So getting together and talking about our experiences with the land, what might have changed, how we can better take care of it, where the good hunting grounds are, how vital burning is to the survival of the land is absolutely wrapped up in how we conduct ourselves as a culture.
Beautifully put. We are unfortunately coming to the end of this conversation. So maybe I want to open up just one last time. If there's anything you haven't covered that the audience is listening and needs to know, maybe we haven't heard from Janaki, Mandy, Janette, or in the last few minutes, is there anything you would like to say about your own experiences of improv? Just the final thing you'd like the audience to know. We'll start with you, Janette.
I think just with fellow improvisers especially, I just would encourage them not to be scared, like not to feel, there's a sense of panic I feel when say me and another player I was mentioning earlier were doing a scene, and I feel that the white player was panicking like, oh God, how are we going to look to the audience? I need to save the company right now. Wipe. So I just feel like, don't panic, like it's going to be okay, and just trust that we're going to say the right things, that we know what we're doing. And if maybe it is inappropriate in the sense of nothing cultural, but I don't know what I mean, but that we then cut us off, that's fine. But I think if we were just beginning to speak, let us breathe, just have more trust, and don't be afraid, like we'll be okay, we can handle it, So that's what I just encourage them.
I like that, just trust us. Janaki or Mandy, who said was that Mandy?
Yeah, that was me actually. Right. I absolutely ditto to everything that Janette just said, just to trust us, to know that we can make the decisions of what's culturally appropriate and what's not. Because of our backgrounds, we know when we're going to cross the line, but you may not. So just just trust us.
Yeah.
I think, sorry, Ashwin, just, jumping in what Mandy and Janette said, I think, if you have a question, there's no such thing as a stupid question. So if you have thoughts and your concerns, talk to us. Talk to us in class. Talk to us before the show.
Talk about it.
Talk about it. Like ask us. We want to talk about it with you about race.
Ask us about our culture. Yeah.
Ask us what is deemed offensive to us, what is fine to play with. Like, we want to have those discussions. So, yeah.
I had a comment coming from the chat. I think you've coined a new term, white fragility.
Beautiful.
That's beautifully put, whoever that was. And let me know who that was. I like that term.
Liz Talbot.
Okay. I'll just answer right out. It's from Liz. Anyway, I think that's about it. Colin, Charles, one last word from you before we wrap up the show.
The only thing I was thinking and listening to everyone right here at the end is that I'm a bit surprised to hear about things being wiped because of my own training. My trainers were very supportive and made sure that everyone else in the class understood that your job as a performer is to support. That's it. Not to run interference, not to put brakes on one of your scene partners. Your job is purely to support and help move the story that's being told, help move it forward by adding your creativity to it. So it's really surprising to hear this. I've been curious about, has this been happening in a performance? And for some, it sounds like that's been happening in a performance or in a classroom structure where you're working it out. And in either case, that person or those people need to understand and be told, you're not doing your job.
Yeah.
By doing this thing. Trust us.
That's excellent. And Anna's writing me a last message. I'll see what it is. But just as I said, thank you all for listening. There's going to be a recording of this if you missed the start. So she will put the whole thing up there. She said this is a really good note for teachers as well. Trust us. Let us tell our stories. Right. And as I said, don't wipe too soon. Go out into communities, take improv into the communities. If you're a director of an improv company, start making that a priority to go out there into communities.
And quite possibly some improv companies could offer scholarships to students, potential students, to come and train with us free of charge.
Cool.
We just want you here,
Or teach with us.
Or teach with us.
Yeah. Thank you all for sharing your time so generously tonight. This has been a great chat. We hardly ever get to chat where it's just people of color, and the conversations are always much more blunt and interesting, I think, about this subject. So I'm glad to have had that with you guys. And thank you. The recording will be up, and good night.
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks.